take a shot towards the end zone. Underthrown, McCollum, touchdown. Trey Tucker. To the end zone it goes. Caught! Touchdown, Armon Benz.
Bearcat Blitz, a busy week in the realm of Cincinnati athletics. Football getting back at it after a bye week, and the Bearcats basketball team fully diving into it. First game of the season happening just hours away from this recording time between myself, your host, Russ Heltman of Cincinnati Bearcats on SI. Check us out wherever you can, whatever social media outlet you use, whatever web browser you use. You can find Cincinnati Bearcats on SI at si.com/college/Cincinnati. And you could also check out my good buddy co-host Neil Meyer from Cincinnati Rivals, the front office news.com, all the good stuff there. And you can check out our show on whatever podcast feed you frequent, whether that's Apple, Spotify, Google, all of that good stuff. Please subscribe, rate, and review there on those mediums. And please subscribe on YouTube, Talking Cats with Russ Heltman. You can find every show posted there after we get done recording. A loaded show coming your way after I tell you all about Bet Online. It's the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, Bet Online provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen, with the largest selection of odds and everything from football, NBA, NHL to entertainment and political props. Head to Bet Online today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. Bet Online. The game starts here. Great show in store for everybody. We're going to give our team MVP picks and our 6 men of the year choices for Cincinnati Bearcats basketball as they get ready to take on Arkansas-Pine Bluff this evening. As roughly 33.5 to 32.5 point favorites. There is not a lot of doubt from the odds makers about who is going to win this game, and even worse at our friends on betonline.ag in terms of the expected result for Arkansas-Pine Bluff. 35-point favorites is Cincinnati on betonline.ag. So big win expected tonight against the team in Arkansas-Pine Bluff that is really bad. We'll get to that in just a minute and more what to watch for after the break. But Neil, we'll start with you, bring you in now, my man. Who is your team MVP selection for the Bearcats and Wes Miller's crew in the 24-25 season?
Yeah, I mean, you look at this roster, Russ, obviously you could go a couple of different ways here for who could be your
obvious.
MVP.
It is not obvious.
It's not a clear-cut answer like we've had in years past, but for this Cincinnati team, Russ, you could really sit down, and it's a great question for those who follow Cincinnati. Like, there's a legit debate on who could be MVP for this team, and there's 6-7 guys who could be in that conversation. But for me, I'm going to go with Dylan Mitchell. I think the Texas transfer is going to be the big time player that Cincinnati needs there throughout the season. But most importantly, just because of what he's able to do on the inside of the perimeter, I think his presence there, we saw it versus Ohio State. I think what he is able to do and his versatility plays a big role into that. He can guard the 1 through 5. He's a very long and energetic kind of player, but he fits very well into this staff and this scheme that Wes Miller is trying to build here. So I think it's going to be very fun to see him alongside Aziz Bandaogo. But in order for Cincinnati to be the team that they expect to be, it's going to run around Dylan Mitchell. Obviously, he is the only player on this team with NCAA tournament playing experience. So overall, he has something not a lot of others do on this team, and that's the experience of making the NCAA tournament. So he knows what it takes to get to the NCAA tournament, and he's looking forward to getting this team back to the NCAA tournament. So for me, I'm going to go with my MVP as Dylan Mitchell.
Wow. Another kind of in sync selection from Neil and I. Well, just like the record prediction where Neil and I both had the Bearcats going 23-8 on the regular season, I also was going to take Dylan Mitchell as my MVP here. And just for the sake of making things interesting, I'll roll with Aziz Bandaogo as my second choice. He was right behind Dylan Mitchell. Agree with everything Neil just said there. Connecting. I think connecting piece is going to be the most valuable part of this season and what Dylan Mitchell brings to this roster, because he's going to be able to connect defensive possessions. He's going to be able to connect from a potential just contested deep two or a contested shot at the rim to block shots from those ranges, block shots from those areas of the floor on that side. And then the aerial ability he's going to bring. I think we already saw maybe a little bit of a better looking shot form from Dillon Mitchell, jump shot wise, and his 6-for-6 performance against Ohio State was able to hit a turnaround jumper in that game. So that's a big confidence booster for him. And if he's hitting that shot, it's just going to be really difficult for teams to deal with his athleticism on the offensive end of the floor if they're having to willingly give up a 45 to 55% mid-range jumper. I'm not saying he's going to be able to hit him in that range because that would be pretty elite. That would be pretty a strong mark in that area of the floor for Mitchell. But anything close to that, I think, is very possible and something that will help Mitchell be really valuable, if not the most valuable player on this team. Aziz Bandaogo, I mentioned it in shows in the past, a reason why he's going to be so crucial to this team on the defensive end of the floor. I don't know if there's a more important player for this system, for this rotation, for this entire roster in terms of how they're going to funnel balls down into the lane to Aziz Bandaogo and let him clean it up on the other ends, along with Dillon Mitchell roving to be able to aid his big man on the defensive side as well. When you look at Cincinnati, they're projected as a top 15 to top 10 team analytically in almost every major analytics site in terms of defensive efficiency this season. Neil, they're going to win games, and especially win games in the Big 12 by how well they defend and how well they shoot the three ball on the other end, with them going 4 shooters and sometimes 5 shooters out in different areas of the game. So Aziz Bandaogo and his ability to defend the rim, I think, going to be a really crucial part for this team. And I think he could end up having such a big defensive impact and be so efficient on the other end of the floor that he is a strong candidate to be the MVP of this team. But 2 forward picks right there. I think you could go with Day Thomas, Jizzle James, Simas Precocious as a wing option as well. There are so many different options here, Neil, and we'll move to the 6th man of the year pick. I'll go ahead and give mine. Starters, correct me if I'm wrong here, Neil, looking like probably going to be, at least tonight to start, Jizzle James, Simas Precocious, Dan Skillings, Dillon Mitchell, and Aziz Bandaogo. Do you agree with me? That's probably what we'll see tonight in the first week to 10 days of the season while Day gets back healthy?
Yeah, no, I think everyone kind of sees that as the starting 5, and that was the rotation they used versus Ohio State in the charity exhibition scrimmage. That was their starting 5, but I think that's the lineup they roll out there with first. Obviously, with tonight, CBS's John Rothstein reported that Day Thomas will be available, according to Wes Miller, but it's going to be determined to see what kind of role he plays, because obviously you look at these. I
wouldn't play him tonight, Neil. There's no reason to play. There's no reason to play Day Thomas tonight.
Especially with the gauntlet of the Big 12 that's coming. And if this is an injury, which could potentially linger all season, there's no point in rushing him back out there, especially for the first 3 games of non-conference, where you look down, you have Arkansas-Pine Bluff, Morehead State, and then Nichols for the next 3 games. If there's a reason to get Day Thomas fully healthy, it would be right now throughout this stretch, get him healthy heading into Villanova.
Good stuff, Neil. Thank you for mentioning that. Day Thomas available tonight, reportedly. Not confirmed if he will play, and I would say it doesn't make a whole lot of sense as a 30-plus point favorite to risk anything with Day Thomas, just to let him keep mending and get fully ready to go, even more than 100% back during this well-structured non-conference slate that has them kind of onboarding with some easier opponents to start the season. 6th man of the year for me, Neil, going off of that kind of top 5 starters list. I think Day Thomas would be the obvious choice here, but I'm going to go with Connor Hickman. I think Connor Hickman could come in, instantly provide offense off the bench. I think he's going to be a stable force in that sense. I think he's going to be the guiding force of this offense in terms of ball handling, in terms of just ball pressure, and in terms of playmaking for this second unit across most of the season. Connor Hickman, to me, Neil, is one of those guys. He's one of those 8 players that could definitely be a starter, but I think he's going to have a super starter impact as a 6th man option and be their top player coming off the bench. But just like with the MVP pick, man, there are multiple options that I would not have qualms with here.
Yeah, no, most certainly agree with everything you said there on Connor Hickman. And Russ, this is an opportunity where when we were talking about planning this show, 6 man, I had to sit back and really think about it, because Connor Hickman provides so much for you on the bench. There's a reason he was a big-time transfer addition for Cincinnati. He's able to score. He's a great catch and shoot scorer. He's an elite shooter from behind the arc. But for me, I'm going to go with Day Thomas, Russ, because you look at what he was able to do versus Ohio State, 11.6 assists, despite having a couple late turnovers. I really liked what I saw out of Day Thomas in the charity exhibition scrimmage versus Ohio State. Now, does this injury kind of put some things in a wrench, maybe, depending how long they keep him out for or whatnot? It's kind of something that could linger that decision, but Day Thomas's impact is just going to be, it's going to be as big as Connor Hickman's this season. Obviously, the backcourt, it's going to be the motive that keeps Cincinnati going. Obviously, everyone has the hype around Jizzle James, and respectfully so, but people can't forget about Day Thomas or Connor Hickman as well. So it's going to be interesting, but my sixth man of the year, I'm going to go with Day Thomas. I think we have a great combo there in the backcourt. Obviously, that's where both of our picks are going. It's the Connor Hickman and Day Thomas. But like you mentioned, there's so many different candidates that you could throw in this six-man position. It could be Rayvon Griffith. It could be a guy in Arrington Page. It could be a Dan Skillings, even though he's going to start. Like, you don't know what rotation Wes Miller might throw out there on any given night. There's a couple of different options. Tyler Betsy you could even throw into there as well. So, I mean, there's multiple different options for Cincinnati there on who could be the six-man. But the biggest thing important when we're talking six-man, Russ, who's going to step in and be the John Newman guy? That's a role that's still up for discussion, and it's an open opportunity. But there's multiple guys on this roster that is capable of coming off the bench and making an immediate impact just due to how talented and deep this roster really is.
Right. If Day Thomas ends up being a sixth-man option coming off the bench most of the season, you have one of the top 5 steal artists in the Big 12 coming off the bench in that sense, and a guy who had the most steals last season in any season for a Bearcats player this entire decade, averaging 1.7 swipes per game. So a lot of talent all over the place for Cincinnati. We'll take a quick break here and get to some things to watch for tonight in a expected blowout against Arkansas-Pine Bluff, one of the worst teams in the country analytically. We'll tell you exactly how bad after this break on Bearcat Blitz. 7 p.m. tonight at home, Neil, against Arkansas-Pine Bluff, a team that is projected to be awful. It's just flat out awful in 2024, 2025. Neil, they rank right now on KenPom.com 355th out of 364 teams in the entire country. Widely expected to be one of the worst offenses and defenses in the country. And going to bring some pace, though, to this one, Neil. They're expected to be one of the top 25 teams in pace across this entire season by KenPom.com. So can expect some points here in this outing. Can expect Cincinnati to get, I think, the ability to get some good cardio, get some good kind of run for players down the bench. Neil, I think the only thing in question here is, will Cincinnati win this game by over 30 points and end up covering the spread? They should dominate Arkansas-Pine Bluff at home here. I was doing some research before the show. Neil, on this roster, people can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. There is not one player for Arkansas-Pine Bluff that last season in the Division I aspect of college football, the Division I level, posted at least 7 points per game. Just one, actually one player did that. Only one player posted more than 5 points per game the entire season. No one else on the entire roster has averaged more than 5 points per game in the preceding season. I just don't know how Arkansas-Pine Bluff keeps this within 25, let alone keeping it close down the stretch for a possible loss for Cincinnati.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I'm right there with you, Russ. Obviously, you look at what Arkansas-Pine Bluff's roster is. You mentioned it. There's only been one guy on this roster who's averaged more than 5 points per game coming from last season. They are ranked very, very low according to all college teams heading into this one. But I think this is a great opportunity for Cincinnati to really get their feet wet, build their roster, and kind of see what rotations they're working with. Obviously, they had the closed scrimmage or the exhibition game versus Ohio State. You had the secret scrimmage versus Pitt. So overall, I think this is a great opportunity for Cincinnati. I really do, and it's going to be interesting. But there's no reason Cincinnati should not blow this team out by at least 25 points tonight here at Fifth Third Arena. An expected sold-out crowd. Fifth Third is going to be rocking. You're going to have your crowd support behind you. It's going to be interesting, but I think Cincinnati covers the spread tonight and gets the job done and goes to 1-0 with the big victory, a big blowout victory over Arkansas-Pine Bluff.
If you want to fade Neil, bet with betonline.ag. They have the best line on the market by far for Arkansas-Pine Bluff. Nobody else is hanging a plus 35 number out there. Everything kind of covering between 32.5 and 33 points on most sports books. That's a big difference. That's a massive difference in betting to get those extra 2 points there if you want to take Arkansas-Pine Bluff. Not anticipating there's a lot of people listening to this or watching this show that are going to be wanting to put their hard-earned money on Arkansas-Pine Bluff tonight. And I don't know, Neil. This seems like, how do you even gauge if Cincinnati is going to be able to cover 35 or 33.5, which is what it's sitting at most books? It's just it's the first game of the year. You don't even know what the lineups are going to look like. Maybe just sit this one out, people, and see how the team looks to start, and then you can start getting into the action with games against Morehead State and Nichols before their first road matchup. Neil, it's kind of a trio of tune-up games for Cincinnati. No business losing any of these first three contests when you think about them having a 99% chance to win against Arkansas-Pine Bluff. This is all according to ESPN Basketball Power Index. A 94.3% chance to win against Morehead State. And the Nichols game has Cincinnati slotted with a 94.6% chance to win. It's about not finalizing, but finding those strong rotations to start early here and picking up some momentum going into your first road matchup against another one of those bouts with a local area team. Just love that Wes Miller is doing this. I love that he's giving us these local matchups spliced in between some of these more cupcake ones. It's exactly how you should be building a college basketball non-conference schedule, especially when you live in a basketball flush region like here in the Midwest and in the state of Ohio in general.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're Wes Miller and this staff, you love having the opportunity to play some of these cupcake teams and then come back with the hard challenges of Dayton, Xavier. Northern Kentucky is not going to be an easy challenge. I hate to say that, but you look at what happened last time in Truist Arena back in 2022. So to have these opportunities to play some of this local talent in the tri-state area, I think that's a great opportunity for not only Cincinnati, but for the other schools as well. But Russ, there's no reason that Cincinnati should not be 3-0 heading into Villanova. And as we talked about, there's a great realistic
4-0. That would be 4-0 heading into Villanova.
4-0. But there's a great realistic chance that Cincinnati could go 10-1 or they can go 11-0 in the non-conference slate. And if you do that, heading into Big 12 play, it's going to be a pretty exciting times at Fifth Third Arena.
Villanova on December 3rd. Georgia Tech, the game right after Northern Kentucky. Back-to-back road games for Cincinnati on the 19th and on the 23rd of November. That first road game, we'll get to it more in depth, obviously, around that time in the middle of November against Northern Kentucky, but a decent test on the road against the Northern Kentucky team ranked 162nd nationally on KenPom. That's right in the middle, just above the median portion of the teams nationally, and 122nd on defense. So a solid test for this Bearcats offense going on the road to Truist Arena. Taking a quick break here on Bearcat Blitz, but before we get to our great sponsors, I want to tell you about another one of our awesome sponsors, Cherry Bundy Tart Cherry Juice for Recovery. You can find a bunch of natural ingredients and products, no added sugar in the Cherry Bundy Tart Cherry Juice. Tart cherries are some of the highest antioxidant fruit or veggies in the world. They hold natural anti-inflammatory properties with incredible benefits that include reduced soreness, increased recovery, naturally occurring melatonin to help you sleep, and immunity support. You can pick these up at cherrybundi.com. That's CHERIBUNDI.com, on Amazon as well, or at retailers like Publix and Kroger. I would recommend going through Cherry Bundy because you can do a subscription service for the tart cherry juice and get a little bit of a discount that way. And you can be like the Bearcats, the basketball teams, the football team. They recover with Cherry Bundy. Get some Cherry Bundy tart cherry juice today. 60 tart cherries packed in this little 8-ounce bottle, and you can recover like your favorite athletes. And I'll tell you firsthand, tastes really good, really great for recovery, and a really great day starter. Nice drink to start and drink in the morning. Get your day off on the right foot with Cherry Bundy Tart Cherry Juice. Go to cherrybundi.com, CHERIBUNDI.com, to pick up your first few bottles. Quick break here on Bearcat Blitz, and then switching to football. Neil, from excitement to some tough news for Cincinnati Bearcats football. It's becoming, honestly, a tough scenario for this Bearcat staff of Neil finding talent early, finding solid talent early, getting them to commit, and then losing that talent once it gets noticed by all the other big time schools to the bigger NIL deals, the bigger name brands. And it happened once again here with defensive line commit, 3-star 2025 player, Benny Patterson out of, let's see where he was from, Illinois, Indiana.
Newcastle, Indiana. Yep.
Castle High School in Newburgh, Indiana, 659th ranked player nationally, 75th among defensive linemen, and has decommitted from Cincinnati and committed to the Michigan Wolverines. So it goes to show another power conference, high level program poaching a player from Cincinnati, 6'3", 240 pounds. He is rolling with the Wolverines for his playing career. And Neil, kind of brings us to a big picture look at this class where they're most likely going to finish in the kind of low 60s, high 50s nationally, most likely once we get to the end of the full period in the next month or so. I don't know that they're going to be able to eclipse the top 50 after this one. And it's largely looking like, Neil, with the way the NIL coffers are set up for this program right now and the way they want to hand out that those NIL packages, it's just they're not going to take big swings and big investments on unproven players when we know that you can go into the transfer portal, you can get 15 to 20 guys a cycle going into a winter cycle, a winter schedule, and be able to come out with proven talent that's much more mature at that from the portal as opposed to giving that money to an unproven recruit. I think what they're doing right now is the right path if these transfers keep on hitting like they have. But all in all, like we've talked about, if you want to be a consistent Big 12 champion and eventually down the line, what Cincinnati, I'm sure, is aspiring to be, a consistent national title contender, some of these recruiting battles need to start getting won by Cincinnati. But I don't know, Neil, like where we sit, it just seems like they're caught between a rock and a hard place of deciding, do we want to keep going with transfers and investing money there, which has worked very well? Or do we want to take even more risk with high school players and develop them with more investment being made on that end when you might not necessarily remotely get close to a strong return on your investment?
Yeah, Russ, that's a really great question because, I mean, you look at the job that this Cincinnati recruiting staff have done, most importantly, Cass Simmons, Jack Griffith, Zach Grant, and what they are able to do there in the recruiting department. They have done a fantastic job at finding talent early, getting them to commit, but they have been great at identifying talent. Now, Benny Patterson was a guy that was committed to Cincinnati dating all the way back to April of last season. And then obviously you look at what transpired over the last month. USC comes calling, LSU comes calling, Florida State comes calling, Michigan comes calling. That says a lot about what the job that this staff is doing. It truly does. And I mean, they're doing a great job at identifying talent, but they have to find ways to sometimes maybe beat these other big powerhouse schools in this recruiting battle. And then you look on top of it, the recruiting battle, another Cincinnati commit got offered by Ohio State just last night in 3-star defensive back Jordan Woods. So it's going to be interesting to see what goes down here before National Signing Day in 1 week, because National Signing Day, early signing period, starts next week. So it's going to be interesting to see what really happens. Well, early signing for basketball starts next week. Football is later in December. But overall, it's going to be interesting to see what happens here in the next month. Now, it's kind of going to be different because of the speculations of the roster and the scholarship spots going up from next year. So overall, it's going to get interesting. But this staff is doing a great job at identifying talent early in the process. But Russ, you and I both know from the past that this staff is very big on game film. If they can get game film like they were able to do in the transfer portal and hit like they did this offseason on guys like Josh Minkins, Jared Bartlett, Jake Golday, especially has been the biggest impact transfer. But if they can find ways to continue to make those splashes in the transfer portal, it's going to be interesting to see what kind of approach they take. But overall, you still have to find ways to kind of keep those big time recruits as well.
Right. I mean, just look at what they've done in the transfer portal. When you look at the overall additions they've made, if I can get it to load here. There we go. Transfer wise, I mean, Jamoy Mays hit Jordan Robinson, hit. Harris Adams, hit. Jake Golday, hit. Lozawicki, remains to be seen. Hasn't been able to really play much behind some veterans. Cam Rutherford, I would say, is a hit. He's made an impact so far. Max Fletcher, going to be your starting punter next year. Josh Minkins, hit. That's 8 guys right there. Brendan Sorsby, hit. Chance Williams, likely redshirt, to be determined. Tyron Smith got injured. I won't say he's a miss or a hit or not. I mean, Neil, we're looking at Derek Canteen up there, a hit. Joe Royer, a hit. Mekhi Miller, kind of. Jared Bartlett, a hit. Logan Wilson, a hit. Cameron Wilson, a hit. Tony Johnson, a hit. Evan Pryor, a hit. Neil, they've hit almost roughly 17 to 18 transfers.
Of their 20 transfers that they've hit on.
24 roughly. I don't have the hard numbers right now because I'm trying to make it still sound good here on the pod while doing math in my head in real time. But it's like a 65 to 70% hit rate, like full on starting level impact from the transfer portal. If they can consistently do that, then yeah, they can contend in this league with that strategy. It's just who knows how sustainable that is with how little of a database we have on these types of transfers. It's only been a few years with this kind of ability to bring in this many guys at once. So, I'm less down on the recruiting given how well the transfer portal has gone, Neil, and just how the same issue keeps happening when we look at the decommits this cycle. Mikkel Skinner, they brought him in early. They get him to commit early as a 4-star talent. He goes to Kentucky. I think we can all kind of figure out there was maybe a little bit of a bigger bag waiting for him at Kentucky than they were maybe offering at Cincinnati. Benny Patterson, same kind of thing where you offer him early, you get him to commit early, and he goes and flips to a Big Ten school, high-level Big Ten school. Eric Gale, similar kind of situation, Big Ten school flip, and Paul Nelson, Big Ten school flip in Indiana. Those ones I had a little bit more of an issue with just because they should be a similar level of talent development and overall achievement status in your career in terms of what you can do football championship wise at Indiana and Illinois. But Colin Wilson, the other one as well, Mississippi State, SEC, they get him to commit and decommit from Cincinnati. So I wouldn't say the sky is falling around the football recruiting class. It's just, it's so hard to do, Neil, but do they honestly have to figure out like an even smaller sweet spot of, do we offer this guy now and get him to commit now versus do we wait a little while and have to time it? It's almost like, Neil, they have to not only factor in the talent that they're going after, but also almost have to factor in when they time these offerings and commits and all that kind of stuff to be able to keep these poachers away from them. It's absurd.
Yeah, no. And I mean, it's honestly a great thing to have if you're a coaching and recruiting staff, if you have all these other big time schools hitting up the guys that you recruited. So overall, I mean, you hate to see it, but if you're Cincinnati and them, it means you're doing a pretty dang good job, to say the least, that you're having these big time schools. Yeah, and identifying the talent early. And I mean, you look at what they've done in this recruiting class. I mean, Paul Nelson could have been a guy that came in here and contributed right away. He goes to Indiana, who's a surging Big Ten school right now behind Kirk Cincinnati.
Right, they got a chance to be in the playoffs. So I might have been completely wrong comparing Cincinnati to Indiana. I mean, they're undefeated still, right, Neil? Like they're blowing teams out by 30 every week.
And then you look on top of it, Eric Gale goes to Illinois. Benny Patterson goes to Michigan, who's coming off a national championship. So I mean, look at the talent that people are identifying there in the recruiting department. An example: Cass Simmons, Jack Griffith, Zach Grant. Now that you have these other big time schools coming, means this recruiting staff and this football interior in the recruiting department is doing something not other schools are doing right away, and that's identifying the talent early on into the recruiting process instead of later into the senior season.
And as we kind of close up shop here on this show, we'll do a full deep dive into West Virginia on Thursday for the upcoming game at noon on Saturday at Nippert Stadium. But just keep following the path. I think this is the right game plan for Cincinnati. I was a little, I would say, harsh on the recruiting over the summer period, but the transfers are hitting. And if the transfers are hitting like this, then the recruiting does not necessarily have to be at a top 35, top 40 level nationally. Would like to see him get into the mid 50s, low 50s, or high 40s if by some miracle they can do that in this class. Probably not going to happen, but overall, I think as we get to the back half of Scott Satterfield's second season, things looking a lot better despite the loss of Benny Patterson over the weekend on a bye week than they did this time last year in 2023. For Neil Meyer, I'm Russ Heltman. This has been Bearcat Blitz on the Believe Network. Basketball is back. We will be back on Thursday to recap all of the action against Arkansas-Pine Bluff and fully preview the West Virginia matchup in football. Have a good few days, everybody.
7-6, Ritter to the end zone, looking for Pierce. Did he hang on? Yes. Touchdown. Back as I've been around. Here he goes again. Busts free. Jerome Ford down the sideline. Foot race. House call. Touchdown. 79 yards. Big one in the Peach Bowl. This is a big one, too.